Something I've been thinking on lately is that the role of the incident commander is going to become more and more relevant because with the surge of AI tooling, that person is going to now be responsible not just to coordinating humans, but most likely also coordinating these AI tools. Hi, and welcome back. In this episode, I want to talk about incident management. And more specifically, I would like to talk about a framework that actually works when things get difficult. I will start by sharing an experience that shaped how I think about incidents. Then I will talk about the framework itself, and I will focus on the 3 different steps that I think are important. And at the end, I will share one practical activity that you can do in your own work in order to observe how incidents are working in your organization. So let's start with the story. This was my first job as a software engineer. I was working in a team that was owning a system that ended up having an incident. It all started with some alerts, then more alerts, and then we finally realized that a lot of customers were being impacted. We create a call, and a lot of engineers joined the call, and everyone wants to help, which was great, but there was no structure. People were talking over each other. Multiple engineers were looking at the same logs. Multiple engineers were trying to propose a fix that actually was contradictory with what other people were trying to propose. So there was no structure whatsoever and not a clear understanding of what was our priority at the time. And also, I remember that some managers jumped into the call, multiple managers actually, and they were asking about the ETA for resolution, about the impact, and they had good intentions. They needed that information to keep stakeholders up to date. But because no one had taken ownership of the coordination, every new question created more noise, confusion, stress, rather than clarity. So we eventually resolved the issue. That's not the problem. But afterward, it was clear that much of the stress didn't come from the actual technical difficulties, but more from the lack of structure under stress. So if you're designing or improving your incident management framework, here's where I think it's really important. And it's dividing the framework in 3 steps. First is defining the incident. Second is actually handling the incident. And third is learning from the incident. So let's start with defining the incident. You need a shared definition of what an incident means and the levels of severity that can be applied to an incident. If teams waste time debating whether something is serious or not and whether we should be declaring an incident or not, you've already introduced delay that will most likely have more negative customer impact. And I think about this the same way that fire departments operate. They encourage that if you see smoke, call us, even if it turns out to be a false alarm. The cost of checking a false alarm is much lower than the cost of waiting while a real fire spreads all over. An incident framework should work the same way. If you're unsure, declare the incident. Over-triggering is much cheaper than underreacting. And if you realize that people are over-triggering too much, then that's something that you can try to solve separately. The second phase is handling the incident. And this is the phase that I think needs the more structure. I believe that roles must be explicit and understood ahead of time. One person should be responsible of coordination and decision making. That's what we call the incident commander. Another person should be responsible for communication, keep the stakeholders up to date on what's happening and any ETAs. And then you want subject matter experts, people that understand the domains of the incident, that are actively investigating and trying to fix the problem. So these 3 roles are the ones that are most important. The firefighter analogy applies here too. When there is a fire, you have the chief who doesn't grab a hose. The chief is responsible to coordinate, assess the situation, and allocate resources. Other firefighters have trained to execute specific tasks. If everyone tried to do everything at once during a fire, the situation would quickly become really chaotic, and the time to actually extinguish that fire would increase. Software incidents are no different. You want the person that is focused on coordinating, focus on coordinating. You want the person that's focused on communicating, focus on communicating. And the people that have the more expertise into debugging and fixing the issues, focus on that. Something that I've been thinking on lately is that the role of the incident commander is going to become more and more relevant. Because with the surge of AI tooling, that person is going to now be responsible not just to coordinating humans, but most likely also coordinating these AI tools. You'll have AI tools that are going to be really good at digging into logs. You're going to have AI tools that are going to be really good at communicating with different stakeholders, to updating status pages. You're going to have AI tools that are going to be really good at debugging, and fixing the issues. So the role of the incident commander now is going to become even more important because they're going to coordinate not just humans, but also machines. Another important principle during the phase of handling an incident is prioritization. I've seen teams that struggle with this. The most important thing during an active incident is containment. You want to stabilize the system as soon as possible. The root cause analysis or understanding why something happens can come later. And the analogy with the fire is the same. When a fire truck gets to a house that is on fire, they don't focus on figuring out why did these fires happen, when did it start. Their goal is to extinguish the fire as soon as possible. So the third phase is learning. And a lot of folks call the process of learning the postmortems. I believe all postmortems should be required for any meaningful incidents, and they should be done in a defined time frame, not really far from when the incident happens. And most importantly, postmortem should be blameless. And when I say blameless, I don't mean no accountability. What I mean is that you focus on where did the system fail and not where a specific person failed. Because if people fear being blamed, they will hide mistakes. That's how humans work. And hidden mistakes are much more expensive than visible mistakes. A strong postmortem should answer 3 questions, and you can define how these questions get answered. But you want to know what happened, why it happened, and what will it change as a result of what we've learned. If postmortems do not lead to a meaningful change in systems or processes, they're useless. The framework becomes more than a ritual rather than let's do this because we need to learn something good for us. So we define the 3 phases: declaring an incident, handling the incident, and learning from the incident. Now, I would like to talk about something that you can try that hopefully is beneficial for you. The next time that an incident happens, of course, try to fix the incident, but at the same time, let's focus on observing what's going on during the incident. What are the different roles? Are they complementary or are they redundant? Do we have a person that is coordinating? Do we have a person that's communicating? Do we have a multiple folks that are trying to fix the issue? And after the incident, do we have a postmortem that has led to any changes that will make our process better or our systems better? And those observations hopefully allow you to figure out the areas that you can improve the system and the framework, and as a result, make your team much more effective at resolving problems and at the same time, hopefully less stress when those happens. I think that's all what I wanted to cover today. I hope you learned something useful, and thank you so much for listening.